why are WoW players scared of Mythic Plus dungeons? But I don't think normal players are scared. I think it's more the casual player base. And I do think that it's the perceived difficulty of Mythic dungeons. And the fact that you can't just queue into them. Like, you have to have a pre-made group to get into them, which I actually don't agree with. I do think that they should have where you can just queue up into a group up to, I would say, even Mythic plus 5 at most. Maybe more, I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't see why not, right? Because if it fails, then it fails. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Um, but I mean, that would be my assumption on why a lot of players, at least the casual player base, doesn't do Mythic Pluses. Is it's a pre-made group, which right away, that's like probably I don't know, 70% of the casual player base just plays by themselves. You know what I mean? And the ones that don't, I don't know if they have like you have to have 5 people. You know what I mean? And one has to be a tank, one has to be a healer, and not many people even want to do those roles. So because they feel like there's more pressure on them for those roles. I don't know if it's what he's gonna say, but that would be to me like the obvious thing is one, it's a pre-made group, and two, there's I think there's also this preconceived notion because I think when Mythic first came out, didn't you have to have keys? And if you fucked up your key, you fucked the whole group or something like that. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's at least my notion of it way back when they kind of first released Mythic. So we'll see.
So I
Oh, there we go.
So I want to start off this video by saying, this isn't a Warcraft channel, but I've almost exclusively been playing Dragonflight lately, so that's kind of all I want to talk about right
I don't blame him. Dragonflight's been really fun. I got a little bored of it, like a few weeks ago. Like I kind of stopped playing, but like I plan to go back, because of the trading post. So I don't blame him at all. I think Dragonflight's been really a great expansion so far.
now. I've been watching tons of WoW videos, reading guides, and browsing the WoW subreddit, basically fully consumed by this game.
Let me turn up that
While
volume.
engaging in my addiction, I
Volume?
noticed a
Whatever.
recurring theme among a few posts. I don't have the confidence to try time in 11 key. Tell me you have M plus anxiety without telling me you have M plus anxiety. If I can do it, you can too. There seems to be this sentiment among the community that Mythic Plus dungeons are these high skill, high level cesspools of toxicity that only the bravest of players can traverse.
Oh, there's definitely toxicity. Unless it's changed dramatically since when I was doing Mythics, which was Legion, because that was the last expansion I was really invested in. Dude, it's super toxic. So if he says it's not, like, I'm just gonna call bullshit right there.
Now, I don't mean to belittle these people's struggles. WoW players can be the most elitist, toxic people you can encounter
Okay.
online.
I was
I
gonna
just
say.
personally never found Mythic Plus to be the endgame boogeyman it's made out to be.
I was gonna say you can get toxic people in LF fucking G, like the raid LFG, RLG, whatever it's called. So, and that's like stupid easy content.
I've been doing this type of content since the mock challenge runs and would describe myself primarily as a Mythic Plus player. Because of this, I decided to take a look at why so many players may see Mythic Plus as a hardcore only experience. Here's why I think WoW players are scared of Mythic Plus.
I already said why, but I still think the main reason is that you can't queue into it. You have to have a pre-made group. It's the same with Arena. Why BGs are way more popular than Arena is because one, you can just solo queue, and that's why solo queue is popping off. Like when people announce it, a lot of people were excited. The only problem with solo queue right now is that it's 3v3 and you need a healer. It's not a healer is good. It's no, you need the healer to even get into the queue. And that's why the queues are so long. Because when I queue up as a healer, it's almost instant every single time, which tells me that there is a ton of players in the queue, just no healers.
You're done with heroic dungeons, you've managed to clear everything on Mythic 0, and you're locked out of LFR for the week. You don't want to raid, so let's try running Mythic Plus dungeons. Immediate.
Okay, so right there, that's where he shows the weakness here, is that he's assuming people who raid or afraid of Mythic dungeons, which is not the case. I think if you're a player who raids, you're not at all afraid of Mythic dungeons. Maybe Mythic, like high Mythics, and that would make sense, I guess. But um, I would say most raiders have no problem with Mythic. It's the people who can't even get into the raid are the ones who can't or are afraid of Mythics.
Immediately, you're met with a waterfall of numbers and dungeons, groups filling up.
It's not complicated. The higher the number, the harder the dungeon. Like, yes, some dungeons will be easier than others, but in general, like a plus 20 is going to be way harder than a plus 10, no matter the dungeon. Like, that part doesn't really matter. Which I think most people just know. You know what I mean?
And delisting by the second should be easy enough to get a group, right? Well, that's the first obstacle many players face when beginning Mythic Plus content.
Yeah.
See, the metrics that players use to screen possible pug pickups are item level and Raider IO score. There's no real correct item level for Mythic Plus. Obviously the higher the better, but you can realistically do low keys at anything above 350. The issue is, when applying for a group, the group leader can see the item level of everyone who applies. Same goes for their Raider IO score.
I think the rating part should not be in there. That could just be me, though. I don't really see... I think anything under 10 that should not be there. Anything above 10, I guess, would make more sense. Because Mythic 10 and under, like, it's basically normal dungeons. Like, it's normal raid level, I would say. Maybe, not exactly, but I think it's close enough to where, it's not a big deal.
For those of you who may not know, Raider IO score is a point system awarded to players who have cleared Mythic Plus content. It's basically a number representing the collection of the highest level Mythic Plus key you've cleared for each individual dungeon. The higher this number, the more high keys you've timed. This brings a pretty obvious catch-22 for new players. To get invited to groups, you need to have a better Raider IO score. To have a better Raider IO score, you need to get invited to groups. This can leave a lot of players playing Menu Simulator for a long time trying to get invited to groups. The only other option would be to start a group yourself. Put up your key.
See, this is the exact same problem that arena groups run into. Because even with the ones that are like, oh, we're doing it casually or just for the points, a lot of them, no, they're really not. Like, because honestly, I got frustrated with arena. Like, after doing solo queue with my healers, and I was going to do it on my DPS, but it was like 20 plus minutes a lot of times. So I was like, you know what, let me just try to find a arena group and just run that, get my points in. And my item level for PvP was like, I think like 418 on this character. So it's somewhat high, like not obviously the best, but high enough. And like, they weren't asking for your item level. They were asking for your arena rating. And it's like, well, I haven't done arena, I don't have a rating. And then the ones I did join that didn't require a rating, these people's items levels were like freaking 340 and stuff like that. Like, it was crazy. They didn't even have PvP gear. So we would lose, and then they would all leave. And this happened like freaking 3 times in a row, to the point where I'm just like, you know what? Fine, I'll just stick with solo queue.
And become group leader, and assemble your own pug group. Seems simple, but this can be a pretty difficult task.
It's also intimidating. Most people don't want to be the group leader. You know what I mean? Especially if it's not with content they're familiar with. Like, I don't know. Like, I would struggle to find someone who's cool with that, who isn't already raiding and doing Mythic Pluses. You know what I mean?
For a lot of people. I don't think it's a secret that MMO players aren't exactly the most sociable bunch. The pressure of starting a group, talking to 4 people, and then having to know what you're doing because you started the group in the first place can be a scary thing for some. Which leads me to point no.
I would say that's like some. You're talking like over 90%, I bet. So I think some is like a really bad word there. Yeah, if I had to guess, it'd be like 99, probably like 95, 99%.
Number 2. If you're raiding, your experience will pretty much stay the same. You'll bloodlust at the same time every fight, do the same opener and pull, pop your cooldowns at the same stage each time. The tactics don't really change unless you move on to a higher tier of difficulty.
Yeah, but the difference is with raiding, it's like you have your guild that you're raiding with, or maybe your group of friends, right? Either way, you have this group already on hand. So I think maybe that's where I'm like running into is that he hasn't brought up that one of the big problems with doing mythics is getting that group to begin with. Because if you're having, if you're raiding, you could probably just, reach out to your guildmates like, hey, anyone want to run some mythics after the dungeon after the raid, or hey, we already got the raid lockout. Anyone wants to run some mythics? That's normal in guilds,
With Mythic
or
Plus,
at least the
however,
guild I was in.
things are different every week. Mythic Plus dungeons come with affixes.
Yeah, they're different every week, but come on, man. Mythic Plus is not like super hard unless you're like really pushing those keys. But they're not, I would say, harder than like Mythic raids, which is usually the case. Like if you're doing Mythic dungeons, you're probably also the type that would do the Mythic raids as well. So
That apply extra conditions which scale in difficulty the higher the level. You get 1 affix by default, 2 for any key from level 4 to 6, 3 for any key level 7 to 9, and then all 3 affixes plus the seasonal one for any key 10 or higher.
yeah,
These affixes are such a big change in the
I didn't know
landscape of
about
the dungeon
those
that they
exact
can
ones.
kill
So.
runs for new players on the first pull. Affixes can buff every trash pack in the dungeon, have mobs leave pools behind when they die that heal the other mobs who stand in it, and the current seasonal affix requires you to match up a positively charged player with a negatively charged player in a certain time frame or else they get stunned. Which, on a plus 10 key, could be the difference between timing and not timing the key. By now, if you consume any kind of World of Warcraft content, you'll have heard the
I also do think any kind of timer is bad. I personally, I think it's fine if it's like what's the word I'm looking for? Like for your own personal benefit. Like if you want to have a higher time rating for yourself that isn't affected by anything. Um, it's just I don't know why games think that that's a good idea. To me, it just adds like this weird pressure that isn't fun for me at least. I know some people do find it fun, but honestly, uh, we have a speed. There's a speed running community already. I don't think it's necessary for it to be forced down everyone's throat. So, I mean, personally, I think they should just get rid of that mythic timer. Maybe have your own timer. I don't know, like an add-on or something like that. Because let's be fair, if you're the type that's pushing those timers, you probably have freaking 15 add-ons already.
eternal debate between the casual and the hardcore player. I don't need to repeat these sentiments that you've probably heard over and over again, but I will point out that casual players don't want to do homework to
I actually thought about that. That's actually a bad take on my end. But I do think it shouldn't be a default with the timer. Like, I don't think it should be an add-on, but I don't think it should be just automatically turned on. Because like I said, I don't think it should affect the run. Just, I personally think it's just weird. I'm not weird, but I think just doing the dungeon, right? Like, why can't just be doing the dungeon, finishing the dungeon be the reward? Like, why does it have to be done in a certain time frame? Oh,
play a game. If you've ever raided with a guild or pug group, you'll know that players won't even watch a 3-minute video giving them a step-by-step guide on what to do for one boss. So imagine
exactly.
telling a brand new player that they need to know the tactics for 8 dungeons and 13 affixes. Even though they're really not that difficult, unless you're investing a lot of time in the game, it can seem like a ridiculous ask for someone who's just looking to play casually. Which brings me to my final point. Raiding is considered by most the primary endgame for World of Warcraft. It drives
I
the
would
story
agree.
along,
Yeah.
involves large groups of players coming together, which is the initial draw of an
Which I think is where Mythic Plus came from, right? Is that they were trying to look for other avenues of endgame content for people. So, I mean, I wouldn't agree with them anymore. I think for the majority who aren't really into playing MMOs, like at the raiding scene or even that Mythic Plus scene, then yeah, raiding is seen as the endgame. But that's only for people who don't even know what endgame is.
MMO in the first place, and allows you to compare your performance to everyone else with achievements, titles, gear, and sweet parses.
Yeah.
Most often than not in a raid environment, you're in a group of 25 people. As long as you can maintain mediocre performance and not wipe the raid by messing up a key mechanic, you can usually sit back and mentally AFK. It doesn't require you to interact with anyone or communicate at all. I've literally done pub groups where I applied, got invited, then listened to music while I played. Never said a word to anyone, never had a word spoken to me. For a lot of people, this is ironically the ideal scenario for a massively multiplayer game. All of that is thrown out the window for Mythic Plus. You are one of 5. If you're the tank or healer, you're the only tank or healer. You can also guarantee that your DPS is being watched by everyone in the group. It's also a lot more apparent if you mess up a mechanic, ninja pull, don't know how to play your class, or aren't paying attention. Now normally, these things wouldn't be a huge deal. Someone messes something up in a raid, it's fine. The only thing you've lost is your time, but you can just reset and try again. In Mythic Plus, however, you only have one chance to time the key. You need to beat each boss and clear enough trash within the allotted time to improve your Raider IO score and increase the level of your next awarded key.
And that's what I was talking about with the timer affecting it. Like I understand where the developers were coming from with it. I just personally think it was a bad idea if they planned to make Mythic Plus it generally not accepted, but to have more people participating in it. I think just it's not good. That's all I was really trying to get across. I think the system is fine. Like honestly, if they had other avenues of hitting endgame to where you didn't feel like you had to raid or do Mythic Pluses, then actually this wouldn't be an issue at all. Because it's fine. Like, yes, these are for kind of a niche group of players who are all about speed running, being the most efficient with their runs. Like, I applaud them. Great. Good for you. You're playing the game how you want to play it, and that's fine. But I think from a developer standpoint, if they were trying to make this to where the casual player base can get involved, this was badly designed. That's all.
If you fail to do so, then whoever activated their key has it downgraded to one level lower and no one in the group gets a bump in Raider IO score. There's actually something on the line.
Oh, so that's kind of still the case then. So yeah, I mean I thought they had changed that, but I guess maybe just because haven't rated or haven't played WoW at the end game in a while since Legion that I obviously forgot. But yeah, no, I mean no one wants to be the reason why the shit like it didn't work or want to be the fuck up in the group.
Albeit a small and overall unimportant thing, that's not going to stop the toxic players from letting you know you're the one who messed up.
Yep.
It's also for this reason.
Like they'll call you trash, like uninstall, anything really, or anything and everything. I think another thing to keep in mind with these kind of things is it's hard in that position because you can't even argue back because you did fuck up. You know what I mean? Most of the time, if they're a new player just dipping their toes into Mythic and this happened, they would just leave the group and never do Mythic again, which is not what you want from a developer standpoint. You don't want people getting so frustrated they just leave the group.
That creating
or like if you're in the group with them, you don't really want that happening.
A pain. You go to all the trouble of listing the group, selecting the right players, travel and summon everyone to the dungeon, put up your key and get started, only to find out they have no idea what they're doing. You've just wasted time, energy, and your key. The points I've outlined in this video aren't too bad overall. They're things that can be improved upon by the player and overcome with just a bit of preparation and confidence.
It's never going to happen. Yeah, that's a terrible solution, is to say that the players should get good. That never works.
The biggest problem that most casual players face is one they can't control: toxic players. Having your mistakes pointed out or being judged for a not so stellar performance is par for the course in any cooperative online game.
No, it's not. If you played Final Fantasy, you wouldn't be saying that. Because I played Final Fantasy, they don't have Mythic Pluses, but they do have raids where if someone fucks up, sometimes it can really mess up the group. And a lot of times people are like, oh, hey man, you got to do this. Just follow this guy, or like they aren't immediately trying to destroy them emotionally. unlike WoW and like Lost Ark. Because Lost Ark has this exact same problem, and why I actually stopped playing that. Because they have similar things to Mythic dungeons in a sense. Like they have like super hardcore dungeons, or I forget the name, Chaos dungeons. I don't remember anymore. Um, but yeah, like it was just super super toxic. Like one person would mess up, and like everyone in the group would just diss them. I had to be like semi group leader and like, hey man, just do this. You know, this is what's gonna happen, and I like would walk them through it because it's, you know, you're already in the dungeon, and usually it's like the last boss that's like stupidly hard in terms of everyone being what's the word I'm looking for, accountable, I guess. Like everyone has their own mechanic, and if one person fucks up their mechanic, it kills everyone. So in Lost Ark, like we would get to the end, and then it turns out one dude is just freaking garbage. We need him to do what he needs to do, but he is having trouble. So, or she, I had, it was times when it was girls. Well, claims to be girls, doesn't really matter. And I would literally be always the only one in my group who would want to help these people, which tells me, and I'm like, man, like no one wants to help people online. Like everyone's very frustrated. They're like, in which I can understand. Maybe they're like short on time. They're like, I have this amount of time to play, and this person is now cutting into that time. I don't know this person. They're not my friend. Why should I care about them? They're wasting my time. So I don't know. Like I understand where this guy's going, but I don't think his argument's going to do anything.
It's something that you've just
Like it literally, like they've been saying this kind of thing since like freaking Wrath, you know, or since MMOs have been around probably. You know, get good. You know, do research or blah blah blah. Like this, like don't tell players they have to do more. Look at it the other way around. What can the developer do to help players into this content? Is how it should be looked at.
got to deal with if you're playing an online game where your actions can affect the other player's experience. What no one wants to deal with, though, are rude, angry, aggressive dorks who take it personally that you don't know as much as they do and feel the need to sling as much hate as their stubby hands can get across their mechanical keyboards. Most people play games to relax and forget about the crap in their day-to-day
Yeah.
lives. I don't blame them for not seeing the appeal of taking on the sweaty ire of elitist players. While I very much hold the sentiment that Mythic Plus isn't difficult if you just take a little time to read up on what you should do, the abuse.
What is your definition of a little time? Really think on that for a second. What do you consider a little time? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? An hour? Like if I sat, okay, so say I want to go into Mythic Pluses and he's telling me I have to do the research on all of these dungeons, including their affixes or affixes, whatever you want to say. How much time do you think that would take me? Ballpark, I would assume 2 hours. If I really want to know the how everything works, you know, like be really prepared. If I just want to casually do it, probably still going to take me 30 minutes to an hour, maybe. Just going over the fights, you know what I mean? So your little time is actually quite a bit for most people. Most people won't even dedicate 2 minutes, and you're asking them for over 30. Because you got to remember, these people don't do Mythic Pluses, which means they don't have prior experience with Mythics, because otherwise, if they did, they would just do the new Mythics. So this is a brand new, never done Mythics person. And me personally, I have done Mythics, but back in Legion, which was freaking years ago. So I would not be confident enough to run it without doing research. And yet I don't want to do it, because I feel like it's going to take too much time. It doesn't feel worth it. I mean, it's worth it. I know it's worth it, but not for the fun, if that makes sense. Like, if all I cared about was just getting the best gear possible, of course it's worth it. It would also be worth me getting a guild that does raids. I don't want to do that either. I have turned into the casual player, which is a little sad, but at the same time, it doesn't bother me because it's like I did do the hard content. It's not like I didn't do it because I couldn't, or I'm not doing it now because I can't. It's more like I just don't want to. You know what I mean? Like there's other games I want to play. Like Hogwarts is coming out soon, so I'm going to be playing that. So I'm not even going to be playing WoW. So, and who knows how the expansion's gonna, go from here. If it turns to shit, then hey, I just kind of wasted time pushing Mythic, or at least it may feel like that. So I don't know if I agree with that. Like a little bit of time, like it's a bit of an investment. Like it's definitely an investment. Investment. I can't even speak today. Wow.
Some players face simply isn't worth it. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you enjoy this kind of content. I'm still
Yeah, I mean, he says for some players it's not really worth it. Like I said, I did use that word first, but I immediately was like, it's not like it's not worth it. It's more like it's that mentality of imagine if you did do that, you did take your time to invest, and it turns out it's not fun. You just wasted your time. And for a lot of people, they don't like to waste their time. So if it feels like they may waste their time doing this, not that they will, it's a guarantee or anything, but that there is a chance of them wasting their time doing it, that is the problem. You know what I mean? So yeah, interesting video. I do agree with some of his points, but like I said, I don't think he really touched upon, at least in my opinion, the main reason, which is that it needs a pre-made group. Um, it's not something you can just queue into. I mean, yes, you can join those groups, but it's not the same. It really isn't. And it's the same problem that Arena runs into as well. And why the solo queue in Arena is like literally the most popular queue in the game, or at least in BGs. Not BGs, Arenas, I should say. Like if they had solo queue, but for BGs for rated, where you can get arena gear, I think it'd be way more popular.